Hare Krishna. Welcome to another episode in Lives of the Vaishnavacharyas. My name is Chatur Atma Das. If you're viewing this and trying to log into our chat room at the same time, that won't be possible. While you're looking at this, I'm walking around Sri Vrindavan Dham. I'm on sabbatical or break, if you will, little vacation in Vrindavan and Jaipur for 4 weeks. So we've pre-recorded the show you're now viewing. Hare Krishna. So we're going to speak this evening about one of the prominent personalities in Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life, and that is Raghunatha Bhatta Goswami. Raghunatha Bhatta Goswami is, of course, a member of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, as glorified in Srinivasacharya Sat Goswamastikam, his 8 prayers of praise of the 6 Goswamis. And Raghunatha Bhatta is probably one of the least written or spoken about. One reason that may attribute to that is that he left no written word himself. He's the most noticeable of the Goswamis that did not write any books. He had many other amazing and wonderful qualities, which we will discuss, but therefore some of the information about him is less than it would be about his associates, Rupa or Sanatan, for instance. So before we can speak about Raghunatha Bhatta, as with many other personalities, we have to back up a bit to get a broader picture. This is one of the tricks of the trade, if you will, of an artist. First they draw an outline to get a concept of what they want to do, and then they fill in the blanks. So we want to make that outline about the life of Raghunatha Das Goswami by explaining where he's come from. Particularly, we want to discuss about his father, Tapan Mishra. We're looking around the year, let's say into the 1400s, 1490s, something like that. And maybe even a little bit earlier. I'd say 1490 sounds good. So at this time, of course, Mahaprabhu is staying in Navadvip, and he is establishing his school for teaching Sanskrit and grammar and like that. He's known as Nimai Pandit at the time. And he's gaining quite a reputation as a scholar and a Pandit. And there's one Brahmin who comes from the a village of Rampur. Rampur is on the Padma River, which is part of East Bengal. And Mahaprabhu was doing a tour, going out and visiting. As you remember in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it describes how after establishing his school, he went traveling. This first travel was the time at which his wife Lakshmi Priya departed. It mentions that Mahaprabhu went out for the purpose of preaching and establishing himself and making students and followers, and while that happened, his wife Lakshmi Priya, who was at home, had departed from this world. So during that time, he was traveling in East Bengal, and this one Brahmin, Tapan Mishra, was very well known for having studied the scriptures and very, very expert. However, he was bewildered, in spite of such study, about the purpose of life. What was the goal of life? What should he do to attain that goal? Now, an important factor here is seen by the fact that he would be instructed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we can say that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was his spiritual master, his guru, his Shiksha guru, teaching him. And without that Shiksha guru, Tapan Mishra had everything available to him, therefore he couldn't understand it. Therefore, the example is given that one has to have a teacher, a practical personality to explain the line, to give the teachings to us in a very practical way according to our circumstance. And this was why Tapan Mishra was having so much difficulty. So in this way, he had one dream. And in that dream, a Brahmin appeared to him. It was a very effulgent Brahmana. Now, this wasn't understood to be Mahaprabhu himself, but it was just a very effulgent Brahmana, almost godlike. And this Brahmana said to him, he said, don't be concerned, Tapan Mishra. He said, do not worry at all. He said, Nimai Pandit has arrived just near here. And he will teach you both the yoga of perfection and the means of attaining the real goal of your life. This Nimai Pandit is not an actual man. He is the Supreme Lord, Narayan himself. So although he has created this universe, he has accepted the form of a human being in order to deliver this world. And then the Brahmin disappeared from his dream. So Tapan Mishra awoke from this dream very excited. He had a desire to attain knowledge, to understand the real goal of his life. And this dream indicated it would happen. Now, as we mentioned before, it says that this dream happened at the end of the night. And those dreams, they indicate that happen at that time period. As you're going into slumber, or as you're deep in sleep, the mind's doing so many things. But they say that those dreams that occurred just before waking in the early part, these are very significant. So in this way, he was very, very excited. So that following morning, after performing his duties, getting up, bathing, doing his puja and his slokas and his like that, he set out to find Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nimai Pandit. So he saw Nimai Pandit sitting on a bench just outside of his home. It was very amazing. So he had a brilliant effulgence that completely filled the entire courtyard. Everything was just like illuminated as if the sun was right there before him. Describes, of course, that his eyes were as beautiful as the fresh leaves of a lotus flower, and that he had fine black hair that was curling and flowing. Remember, this is before he took sannyas, and one of the qualities of Mahaprabhu's beginning Leela, it was his beautiful black hair that he had. And he had a very strong chest, decorated with a fine Brahmin's thread, and a beautiful, brilliant yellow dhoti. It was shining just like the sun, illuminating all four of the directions. So he was surrounded by disciples and students, and he was speaking. In this way, Tapan Mishra saw him and offered his obeisances, falling like a stick at the feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he said to him, "Oh, merciful one, oh, Savior of the fallen, please be merciful and deliver me." So the Lord smiled at him very affectionately and offered a seat. He could see he was a respectable Brahmin, so he received him. "Please, you sit down nicely like this." And he introduced himself. And Tapan Mishra inquired from the Lord. He said, what are the truths regarding the practice of perfection in this life and the goal for attaining that perfection? So then Mahaprabhu instructed him. He said, in every millennia, the Lord advents himself in order to deliver the fallen souls and instruct them in what is the means of worship for that age. In the Satya Yuga, of course, it is meditation. In the Treta Yuga, of course, it is sacrifice. In the Dwapara Yuga, it is deity worship. And in the Kali Yuga that we are currently in, it is the Sankirtan process of attaining the ultimate goal of human life. So Mahaprabhu instructed him in this way. He said, in each of these four ages, the particular process of deliverance is given. And in this age, it is Nam Sankirtan. So Mahaprabhu was instructing like this. And he inspired very much Tapan Mishra. So Tapan Mishra was understanding that the real welfare for humanity was to take up this Nam Sankirtan, and that this was the true Dharma in this age of Kali Yuga. The Lord continued to explain that in the age of Kali, the sacrifice of the holy name is the essential principle. Nothing else will deliver persons in this age of Kali. Therefore, there is no religious principle that is superior to this. Without the holy name, one cannot attain perfection in this age. Therefore, one should renounce all tendency to follow any other path and always take up the chanting of the holy name of Krishna as the Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. By this influence alone, you will understand everything on the path of perfection and the real goal of your human life. So Tapan Mishra was very excited to hear this. You can imagine Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself instructing him like this. So Tapan Mishra became very, very excited. Again, offered his obeisances at the lotus feet of the Lord, prostrated himself full out in this way. And then the Lord was about to get up and leave and go for Navadvip. So then he asked him, he said, "My dear Lord," he said, "I want to accompany you and go with you to Navadvip." The Lord ordered him, he said, "Soon I will request that you should move to Varanasi and that you should reside there. After living there for some time, we will meet again in the future." Saying this, the Lord took his associates and departed for Navadvip. Now imagine, you're aspiring to understand the goal of human life. You get a dream that says, here's how you understand it from this personality. You find that personality. That personality instructs you, and you decide, okay, I want to travel with this personality and learn more. And he says, no, you move to another place where not only is your family not there, you'll set up from the beginning, I'm not there, but sometime in the future I'll come and see you. Oh, such separation. But such was the instruction of the Lord to Tapan Mishra. So Tapan Mishra accepted this, and then he arranged in due course of time that he and his family moved to Varanasi. And he lived there. And, Varanasi, Benares has many different names, Kashidam, like that. So, but this is a very prominent place of the Mayavadis. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had a plan for delivering these people. So anyway, some years go by. Tapan Mishra is there. He has 2-3 other devotees are there. Chandra, Shekhar, like that. Anyway, they're residing there. And in due course of time, Mahaprabhu has taken sannyas. He's returned to Navadvip, engaged in his Navadvip Lila, and he's now taken sannyas. And after, then he began to travel. Of course, you know the story. He took sannyas, moved to Jagannath Puri, did a bit of traveling here and there like that. And so in this way, he returned in his travels, or not returned, but went to Benares, went to Varanasi. And at that time, Tapan Mishra was there in the Ganga, because it's located right on the banks of the Ganga, and he was there taking his bath. And he began to hear the sounding of the holy name, very sweet, very, very potent. And he thought, where is this coming from? This wonderful sound of the holy name. And it was being chanted so loudly that it just astonished him. So he began to look. It describes that he was like a thirsty man looking for the ocean in the middle of the desert. So he began to search, because, Varanasi is filled with Mayavadis. No one takes up the chanting of the holy name there. So he began to look, and he began to search, and across the Ghat he saw that there, on the banks of the next Ghat on the other side of the river, is this beautiful sannyasi. The unprecedented stature and bodily features. And Tapan Mishra thought, who is this great personality? He seems to resemble that Nimai of Nadia that I met. But he was not a sannyasi. So he made arrangements to go there, and he approached him. And he says, could this actually be him? And he looked, and sure enough, when he got there, he could understand. This was actually the self-same Nimai of Nadia, Nimai Pandit. And so he affectionately offered his obeisances again at the feet of the Lord. And when he was embraced, when he rose up from the ground, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took him and embraced him into his arms, and was so happy to meet him. And Tapan Mishra, of course, was very excited to meet Mahaprabhu in this wonderful reunion after such a long time. And of course, Mahaprabhu had completely changed. He was now a sannyas with a shaved head and a vow of renunciation like this. So with great affection, Tapan Mishra took him and brought him into his home. And he washed the Lord's feet, and then he took that charnamrita from the Lord's feet and drank some of that and sprinkled it on his head and gave to each of his family members. One of those family members was his young son, whose name was Raghunatha. Raghunath Bhattacharya, that was his name. Raghunath Bhattacharya. And Raghunath Bhattacharya was about 8 or 9 years old at the time. So you're an 8-9-year-old boy. The guest of honor in your home is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Actually, he was the guest of honor, but he didn't live there. While staying in Benares, he lived at the home of Chandrasekharacharya. And then he would come and take his meals at the home of Tapan Mishra. So in this way, he was there, and Mahaprabhu saw the young boy, and he brought him over and set him on his lap, as you're like to do with a young boy. And he was very happy to speak with him, and showed affection to him, and talking with him like that, asking a little bit about what he's doing, in this way. In the meantime, Tapan Mishra began the cooking, and he was assisted in the cooking by Balabhadra Bhattacharya. Balabhadra, of course, later will have significant roles in Mahaprabhu's pastimes. So he made arrangements so the Lord could take his bath, and then, as soon as he finished his bathing and all, then he came and ate. And this is an important point, because the noon time is when most sannyasis, most people that are very steady in this regards, would take their meal. And before taking their meal, they would take a bath, cleansing themselves from the early days' work or business or activities or dust from traveling, whatever, and then refresh, take down, and honor the prasad, because the prasad is non-different than the Lord. Just as one goes before the deity, having bathed and cleansed oneself, in the same way one would go before the deity's prasadam, which is non-different than the Lord, by cleansing oneself and properly preparing oneself. So in this way the Lord sat down and ate. And when he was finished eating, it mentions that Raghunath went to the room where the Lord lay to take rest, because it's also quite common after you take a good lunch meal, you lay down for a little bit, take a little rest. And he would massage the feet of the Lord. Of course, massaging the feet means massaging the thighs as well. It's a package deal. If you ever get the opportunity to massage anyone, you massage feet and thighs. So in this way, Raghunath massaged, and then after massage was finished, he went back in and cleaned the area and washed all the plates where Mahaprabhu had eaten like this. So in this way, from a very young age, Raghunath Bhatta was rendering menial service to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Very wonderful. So the news spread around Benares, of course, that Mahaprabhu would come. And Chandrasekhar Acharya came, and as I mentioned, he invited the Lord. The Lord very eagerly embraced him, and they sat and spoke nothing but Krishna Katha for some time. And then made arrangements for him to stay at the house of Chandrasekhar Acharya like that. So it mentions there were 3 prominent devotees in Benares at the time. Excuse me. It mentions there were 3 prominent devotees in Benares at the time. One was Chandrasekhar Acharya, 2 was Tapan Mishra, and the 3rd was Raghunath Bhattacharya. Raghunath Bhattacharya. So this is why the Lord came to Benares, to visit with these 3 devotees and get their association in this way. So, after the Lord departed from there, the Lord continued on and returned to Jagannath Puri. It mentions that Raghunath Bhatta actually, he stayed at home he stayed and served his parents until about the age of 28. Lived at home in this way. So, during the 2 months, it was a 2-month period that the Lord stayed at the home of Chandrasekhar Acharya and took his meals at Tapan Mishra's house. There were many opportunities to receive the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for the Lord to give his blessings to him, and for him to hear the different instructions going on. So after Mahaprabhu stayed there, then time came for him to leave and return to Jagannath Puri. Now it mentions that all the devotees at that, you can imagine for 2 months, every day the Lord has been staying in your home, or every day the Lord has been taking his meals in your home, and you've been getting some personal service to the Lord, massaging his feet or cleaning his plate or arranging for Prasham, and now the Lord says, okay, time for me to go. The agony and the mood and feeling of intense separation these devotees felt just caused them to be completely heartbroken. The very prospect of no longer seeing the Lord. So Raghunath Bhatta had an idea, and he bowed himself before the feet, and grabbing the feet of Mahaprabhu, crying and weeping his tears onto the Lord's lotus feet, he begged him again and again, please, please, do not go. Stay a little bit longer. So the Lord took the boy up on his lap, and he assured him, he said, don't worry. He said, you stay here and serve your aged mother and father, and in due course of time you'll come to Jagannath Puri and you'll see me again. No need to be so distraught like this. So then, of course, he set the boy down, he embraced Tapan Mishra, he embraced Chandrasekhar Acharya, bid each of their family members farewell, and then he continued on foot to Jagannath Puri. So, during the course of time, after he left, of course, Raghunatha is a young boy in his studies and like that, and during this time he became very expert in Sanskrit grammar, became very expert in rhetoric, he learned poetry very expertly. These will all come to serve him quite well in his later years. And then, of course, he was exposed to the Shastras, to the revealed scriptures. Revealed scriptures is an important descriptive word for the Shastra, because revealed scripture means that it is shown. If something's revealed to you, right? There's some hidden valuable in a family chest, and the father finally at a certain age, he says, son, come, I want to reveal something to you. And he opens it and shows you this is the heritage of the family. So it's revealed. In other words, someone shows it because you're not able to see it on your own. So this is the importance of learning scripture as a revealed Shastra from a bona fide spiritual master, from a teacher. So in this way, Raghunath learned all the different revealed scriptures, and studied and continued to serve his mother and father throughout the years. And finally, one day, his father said, "You're old enough now. I think you should travel with Shivananda Sain and you should go to Puri. So take this opportunity and go and visit Mahaprabhu. So he's very excited. Tapan Mishra has instructed. And this is also the mercy of the Father. He could have kept him there, but he said, no, you go and get the association of Mahaprabhu again. So he sent him like this. It describes that the ecstasies that Raghunath Bhatta had when his father gave him this instruction knew no bounds. He was just overjoyed at the idea of being able to go and see Mahaprabhu again. So in preparation for this, his mother prepared all kinds of various delicacies, just like sometimes a devotee goes to India or goes to a particular festival or something, they arrange to take some Mahaprasadam or some special prasadam or something like that to distribute when they get there. So mother packed all kinds of nice things for Raghunath Das to take, on behalf of the Mishra family, and all types of delicacies and everything in a big package which he took with him. So, out of very intense eagerness to see the Lord, Raghunath hurried to Puri, just briefly visiting in Bengal and going on like this. And while he was traveling, he met up with one man, and this man's name was Ramdas Vishvasha. Ramdas Vishvasha was a Brahmin Ram devotee initiated in the Ramanadi succession. And he was completely devoted to Lord Ramchandra. And he would regularly, with great enthusiasm and never-ending devotion, chant the name of Ram all day long. So he was a very learned man in Sanskrit poetics and different scriptures, and he was a very well-to-do member of the Kayasta caste. You may remember, although they were somewhat of a subgroup of the Sudra caste, they were physicians and scholars and business managers, things like that. So they also generally had positions with the government. And in this case, Ramdas Vishvasha had a position with the government treasury. So he was quite well-to-do, quite wealthy, and very well trusted by the Shah at that time. So he was traveling to Puri because he wanted to go to Puri and renounce all of his material entanglements and just to visit Jagannath Dev like that. So he was thinking this way. So he met up with Raghunath Bhattacharya, and the two of them traveled together. And Ram could recognize the exalted Vaishnava position of Raghunath Bhatta. And so what he wanted to do, he saw that Raghunath Bhatta was carrying this bag, remember this big bag from his mother with all the goodies and delicacies and all other arrangements. So he said, please, you let me carry that bag for you, sir. It is my duty that I should serve you. You were from a Brahmin family. You're in a Tapan Mishra, of course, was an upper-class Brahmin family. His son was an upper-class Brahmin, and you could distinguish these things by understanding a person's background. And Ramdas Vishvasha was considering himself to be from a lower class. He said, you should let me serve you in this way. So he was carrying the bag. And Raghunath was objecting. He said, no, you shouldn't carry this for me. Why should you take up this difficulty? But Ram, he was saying, no, I am a low Sudra and you're an advanced Brahmin. It is my duty by the laws of society to serve you. Now, I feel the greatest joy in doing this, and I beg you, please give me this opportunity. So in this way, he satisfied his desire in this. So they traveled. So they were going on foot, as we mentioned, to Puri. And when they finally arrive in Puri, they go straight to the abode of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he offers his obeisance straight out to the Lord, falling at his feet. And at that time, the Lord embraces him and says, oh, my Raghunath! And he picks him up and hugs him to his chest like this. You can just imagine you've been traveling and anticipating, when I get there, I'll get to see Mahaprabhu. And then you get to see Mahaprabhu, and he picks you up and embraces you to his chest. How exciting it was. And, he said, you've gone through so much troubles to come and see me, traveling from so far like that. And so Raghunath was thinking to himself, I'm coming to see the Lord. I didn't even think he would know who I am. And here he's received me in so much affection. How is this that a person such as myself, who only had a little association with the Lord as a child, would be received with such great affection by the Lord? So many devotees who are very dear to him. Why should he show his mercy to someone such as myself, the lowest of the devotees? So he was thinking in this way, and in the meantime, Mahaprabhu was laughing and smiling and embracing Raghunath. Oh, my Raghunath, like that. So it was a very, very wonderful reunion. So Raghunath, he fell to the lotus feet of the Lord, and he embraced the Lord's feet. And he said, oh, most merciful Lord, in truth, please tell me, why are you giving so much consideration and mercy to one as humble as myself? Now, this isn't saying, oh, I'm such a humble devotee, but humble in the sense of I'm a low person. I'm a very distinguished, and significant individual. So he was asking him. And I said, Raghunath, you were the son of Tapan Mishra. I cannot forget the service that your family gave to me when I stayed in Benares. How wonderfully your father took care of me and how wonderfully your mother cooked for me. Therefore, your entire family is very dear to me. So in this way, he was appreciating like that. So then the Lord inquired, and how is Tapan Mishra doing? And his good friend Chandrasekhar, how is he doing also? Please tell me. So he was explaining like that, and talking about the different things and which devotees and all like that. So then Mahaprabhu called Govinda, and he said, Govinda, you please make arrangements for Raghunath to have a suitable place to stay. And then after this, he introduced him to Sarup Damodar and all the different devotees, pointing them out one by one. And of course, on behalf of his parents, Raghunatha offered his obeisances to all these, because Tapan Mishra knew many of these devotees, either personally or by name, and sent his obeisances. Oh, when you see Sarup Damodar, give my obeisances. When you see Govinda, give my obeisances, like that. So he also gave them the news of, all the different devotees. And he had passed through Bengal, so he was giving the news of the different devotees. Oh, and I stopped and saw this one and that one. They said to tell you, so on like that. So sharing all the activities of the Vaishnavas like that. And then finally, bringing out the bags that his most affectionate mother had sent with him, Raghunath began to distribute nice Bengali delicacies to all the devotees of Puris, which they very, very happily received. And then Mahaprabhu said, all right, let me have all these turned over to Govinda, and he will arrange to distribute them all to us as prasadam. So they were all done like that. So then he arranged for Raghunath to go and take his bath and then come back and eat prasadam with all the Vaishnavas like that. Very, very nice reception. So for 8 months, Raghunath Bhattacharya stayed in Puri serving the Lord. It mentions that during that time, he would always invite Mahaprabhu for his meals. And he had the opportunity to cook. Raghunath Das, one of his most noted qualities was he was an expert cook. So I was thinking maybe he should become the Istadev of all cooks or aspiring cooks within ISKCON. If you want to learn how to cook, or you really want to become expert in cooking, you get a picture of Raghunath Das and offer obeisances and arti each day before you go to the kitchen like that. So at any rate, Raghunath was very, very expert in this way. And he was especially able to satisfy the Lord with his cooking because he had a very wonderful devotional mood that went into the cooking when he prepared the meals. And this is a very important point. It's Prabhupada expressed to us many times. Krishna doesn't actually accept the food. Krishna accepts the bhakti, the mood of devotion that goes within the preparation of a food. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was not so much concerned with wonderfully prepared meals. I mean, you can find, even in vegetarian circles, what to speak of other unmentionable foods, you can find expert chefs that can blend and arrange different spices and flavors and juices and all wonderful tastes. But if there's no devotion, if there's no bhakti in offering that to the Lord, what does he want to see it for? So it mentions that Krishna doesn't actually eat the food, but he eats it with his mouth, but he eats it with his eyes and with his ears, hearing the prayers the devotee offers with, and seeing the wonderful arrangement. Therefore, when prasadam is offered to the Lord, it should be done in a very pleasing. This is also one of the tricks of any good restaurant. Having run a restaurant, I know this. If there's tricks of any good restaurant, is to be sure that the presentation is very attractive. So Raghunath Das not only could make things very tasty and present them very attractive, but they were steeped in the devotion of him preparing these for the Lord.
Can we pause for just 1 minute?
We're going to pause just for one moment here.
I'm just going to just be on recording and
right. So this mood of what was put into the cooking arrangements of Raghunath Das, of Raghunath Bhatta, was as important as the expertise in the cooking itself. And this is very important to note because you remember when he was traveling, he had this associate, Ramdas Vishvasha. So we don't want to forget Ramdas Vishvasha. I mean, after all, he got the association of Raghunath Bhattacharya, so he must have some part to play in this. And this is that part. Because we find he was a great scholar, Ramdas. We spoke about that. And so when Raghunath Bhattacharya came to the Lord and was able to get the association of the Lord during that time and cook and make these offerings to him, as we mentioned, the Lord's acceptance of these was based on the mood of devotion that Raghunath had. This is contrasted by Ramdas. Ramdas also got to come and meet Mahaprabhu at this time. And it mentions that immediately the Lord could see through the character of Ram Dass. That Ram Dass harbored some internal desires for seeking liberation, because you remember we mentioned earlier he wanted to go to Puri and give up everything. So he had this desire for liberation, and additionally he was very proud of his learning, because he was a very learned person. We spoke about that. So desiring to get liberation and being proud of one's learning. These were both bad qualities in the character of Ram Dass. So when he came before the Lord did not show him very much mercy at all. We've seen this many times before in the pastimes of Mahaprabhu, that he could detect the subtleties of a person's impurities and deal with them accordingly. Mukunda is another example of this in Mahaprabhu's Navadvip pastimes. That Mukunda was an expert kirtanier, led very, very wonderful kirtans, and he could really invoke a beautiful mood. But his shortcoming was he would go anywhere and lead kirtans. He would go to this group and this bhajan and that particular yogi and whoever. He would lead all kinds of kirtans. So when Mahaprabhu had his Mahaprakash pastimes at Srivas Thakur's home of fulfilling the desires of all the devotees as the personality of Godhead, they said, what about Mukunda? You have not called for him. He said, I will not give my mercy to Mukunda because he goes here and there indiscriminately. So there has to be some discrimination about what one does, where one speaks, what one hears, like that. So in this way, the Lord could see right through Ram Dass that he's very proud of his learning and that he is particularly seeking liberation. So he didn't get very much mercy. So because that mood of devotion was not there, it was a complete contrast to the way the Lord dealt with Raghunath Bhattacharya as he dealt with Ram Dass Vishvasha. So after Raghunath had been in Puri enjoying this wonderful association of the Lord for 8 months, the Lord called him to his side one day. He said, my dear Raghunath, he said, your parents are greatly advanced Vaishnavas, both in their spiritual development and in their age. As a matter of fact, it was known that they'd become aged and infirmed, invalid at this point in their life, quite elderly, couldn't get around so well. So he said, I want you to go back to Varanasi and to take care of your parents. And of course you can imagine Raghunath was feeling, oh, I have no objection to take care of my wonderful parents who have given me everything in devotional service and are great devotees themselves. But to leave you, my Lord. The Lord said, don't worry, I'm going to send you with something very special. And he took off his own neck beads and he put them on the neck of Raghunath Bhattacharya. So he was given the neck beads of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He placed them on his neck and he said, in due course of time, when your parents depart from this world, you can return to Puri. You can come back then. Don't worry about that. So he gave Raghunath Bhatta also some different Mahaprasad from Jagannath Puri to take back, just as Raghunath brought different types of delicacies. So Mahaprabhu sent back for Chandrasekhar and Tapad Mishra and the different devotees who distribute this. And then Mahaprabhu gave him 3 instructions. He said, first of all, do not marry. Stay detached and single in your life. Secondly, he said, study the Srimad Bhagavatam from a pure Vaishnava. And thirdly, he said, once your parents have departed from this world, you return to Jagannath Puri to my service. So these are the 3 instructions. And with that, Raghunath began to make arrangements, packing everything up and getting his belongings together, however meager they may have been, and getting the bags of prasadam together. And then he went before the Lord to take his departure. Now this is an important point I'd like to mention. Before one travels, one must take the permission of the Lord. This is something we can practice in our daily lives, in our home temples, or in our temples, in our home altars, in our personal home, or in the home temple that we belong in. Before we leave, we should go before the deity and beg their permission. Please allow me to do this. Please give me your blessings. I'll return safely. So this way we see ourselves as a servant of the Lord in every aspect of our life. My dear Lord, I'm going now. See you later. My dear Lord, please give me your blessings that I may go on this journey and be successful in becoming Krishna conscious and return safely to your lotus feet. So this is what Raghunath did. He was getting ready to go. He had already been instructed. You go, here's what you do while you're gone. So he could have just left. But as his final thing, he went before the Lord. Now please, you give me your permission. So the Lord embraced him very heartily, it mentions. It describes this word heartily. A big, enthusiastic embrace. Said, all right, now you be gone. And Raghunatha went off in this way. Now, when Raghunath returned to Benares, he did indeed, as it mentions, take care of his parents. He served them very nicely, seeing to their needs, seeing to their care and facilities. And it mentions this only lasted for 4 years, because it was within 4 years' time that both the mother and father passed away within the same year. So during that 4-year period, while he was taking care of them, he did indeed study the Srimad Bhagavatam. And he became very, very devout in his studies of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So after the departure of his parents, he gathered up whatever belongings he had left, distributed whatever was from the family to the different Vaishnavas, and then he returned to Puri. When he arrived back in Puri, he was staying there with the Lord. Of course, this time his arrival was more simple. There was no mother to make big bags of fancy prasadam and Bengali delicacies to take in everywhere. But he was very heartily received as well, and stayed in Puri and serving Mahaprabhu in the same way as he had done previously. One day Mahaprabhu called him. He said, my dear Raghunath, he said, I have one instruction for you. He said, I want you to leave Puri and go to Vrindavan. He said, I have previously gone to Vrindavan, and I had much work to do there, but I was not able to accomplish it because I had returned to Puri. He's, as you well know, my mother has requested that I should live in Puri. Therefore, I cannot go to Vrindavan as regularly as I like. Now, this should be a lesson to all young men, or all men, period. It doesn't matter what ashram you're in. It doesn't matter how old you are. You got to pay attention to your mom. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the independent Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, in the sannyas order, points out that I would like to leave Puri, but I can't. My mother has asked me to live here, and to satisfy her, I have to do so. Of course, we know that when Mahaprabhu took sannyas, Sachimata requested that you please at least stay in Puri. That way you're at distance, as is necessary for your order, but I can get news from you regularly as to what's happening. It's not so far away. So to satisfy his mother, the Supreme Mother of the universe, he agreed to this. So he said to Raghunatha, I have much work to do in Vrindavan, and I will do it through you. I want you to go there, and you will assist Rupa, you will assist Sanatan, and you will complete the work that I have only just begun. And what is that work? To write the Bhakti Shastras, to discover the holy places of Vrindavan, and to reignite the presence of Vrindavan as the supreme Dham. Because remember, Vrindavan had been lost. All these holy places were unknown. It's not like when we go there now and everything's right there. You know, there was nothing. It was just forest. So in this way, the Lord arranged for him to make his departure. And he gave him some particular presents. One thing he gave him was some collection of tambu, spices that are offered to the deities. I have an arrangement at my home where to my Girdhari Lal each morning after his meal I offer some combination of spices. And I've shared those with different devotees, and they've become quite sought after by those that have had them. Very tasty. So this kind of tasty little spice the Lord takes after his meal. It's called tambu. And so the Lord gave some of that to Raghunath, and he gave him a large tulsi garland. Now, depending upon which history you read, some describe it as 10 foot, and some describe it as 14 feet. So whether it was 10 feet or 14 feet, it was a big tulsi garland. So it mentions that Raghunath Das received these, and very, very carefully he took these and preserved them to worship them as Mahaprasad from Lord Jagannath, and given him directly by the hand of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So in this way he collected everything, made all of the necessary arrangements, and then began his departure to Vrindavan. Now, of course, we know that Mahaprabhu had gone from Puri to Vrindavan, so Raghunath was very intelligent and found out from the associates of Mahaprabhu, particularly Balabhadra Bhattacharya, who was the Lord's traveling companion, what was the path that Mahaprabhu took. And he took that same path. And it mentions that having set out on that path, that he went in the same places of the Lord, and therefore was able to remember the Lord while he was walking to Vrindavan, and to hear from one place to the next, oh yes, the Lord stopped here, and while he was here he performed the most amazing activities. Oh yes, the Lord visited here, and this is the temple where he went and had darshan, and then he took prasad at this place here. So in this way, from Puri all the way to Vrindavan, he was constantly remembering Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, not only internally in his own mind and heart, but externally by being reminded of all the places the Lord had gone to. So this is the importance of going to these holy places. It enhances our memory of the Lord. So it mentions that finally he arrived in Vrindavan. Such a warm reception, such an affectionate embrace he received from Rupa and Sanatana Goswamis. They were so happy to see him, and he immediately placed himself under their care, accepting them as the senior sannyasis, the senior Goswamis of Vrindavan, studying under them. It mentions that during this time, he continued very, very steadfastly to study the Srimad Bhagavatam with them. Of course, they were very, very affectionate, treating him just like a most confidential associate and godbrother. And then they introduced him to all the different residents of Vrindavan. Excuse me. And in this way he began to settle himself in Vrindavan Dham. Now it mentions that Raghunath Das was blessed with two particular qualities for which he became very famous: his humility and his meekness. Now sometimes people think that to be a humble person is not a very good quality, but there's one very nice description in one seminar that I took, that to be humble doesn't mean to think less of yourself, but it means to think of yourself less. So instead of being self-absorbed, it means just to realize your true position in the material world, that we're such a small, infinite spirit soul in comparison to the entire creation, what to speak of in comparison to the Lord himself. So Bhattacharya was especially known for this humility and meekness. And he would constantly recite the Srimad Bhagavatam. It describes that he had a voice that was as sweet as that of a cuckoo bird. And he would recite any particular verse of the Bhagavatam in 4 different tunes. And all the different verses of the Bhagavatam, when it came time to recite a verse, Raghunatha would be requested by Rupa Sanatan, please tell the pastime of such and such from the Bhagavatam. He would begin to recite those pastimes from memory. And he would recite first one verse in one tune and then 3 more tunes. So each verse he recited in 4 different tunes. The devotees were simply enchanted by the presentation of the Bhagavatam. Keep in mind that generally speaking, we see if someone has an ability to sing very nicely or speak very nicely, they become a little proud of this. But Raghunath Bhatta was very, very humble. By now, of course, Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, he's renounced everything and he's received the sannyas order like that, renunciation. And in this way, he actually was the possessor of great humility. So he was not proudly reciting these. This has been the instruction to him from Mahaprabhu and the request of Rupa and Sanatan, his seniors. So he began to speak in this word. And when he would sing in this way, sometimes his voice would become choked and he would begin to tremble and tears would come from his eyes. So much ecstatic love was there. So the sweetness of the Bhagavatam was something he became very well known for. So the devotees became very greatly attracted by this, and many devotees would come and gather when he would speak incessantly about the Srimad Bhagavatam. So, of course, by this time in Vrindavan, we know that the different Goswamis have established their deities, and Rupa Goswami has his Govindaji deity, which he's worshipping, and Raghunath surrendered himself totally to the lotus feet of this Govindaji deity. And it mentions that the only thing that really gave meaning to his life, it says, and gave real satisfaction and fulfillment was the surrender and the presence of being able to have the darshan of Govindaji and remember Govindaji. During this time, it mentions that he developed an ability at jewelry making. This is one of the interesting qualities. We see that the descriptions are given in various shastras of the 64 qualities of the gopis. 64 arts they were expert at. Not only were they expert at making jewelry, they were expert carpenters. They were expert in meteorology. All kinds of amazing different descriptions are there. But in this particular thing, that Raghunath himself made ornaments, and particularly dolphin-shaped earrings for Govindaji. Now some places here again it's described as dolphin earrings and some places described as shark earrings. Either rate, he was making personal gifts of jewelry in the form of earrings for Govinda. And at this time he had begun to accept some disciples, and one such disciple was a very wealthy landowner from my mind slips. I've told this story just 2 or 3 weeks ago and I can't remember it. I apologize. But it was a very wealthy disciple, and he arranged for that disciple to build the Govindaji temple for Rupa Goswami's deity Govinda. Now, there are some particular descriptions of Raghunatha's character. It mentions that Raghunath Das never, Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, never spoke or listened to gossip. This is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 3rd canto as Gramya Katha. Gramya, of course, meaning the village. This refers to the local activities, the village, Gramya Katha. Kukata. Kukata means bad words, and the other word used in that same verse in the Bhagavatam is matigni. Matigni means things that kill the intelligence. So Gramya Katha is described as ku and matigni, bad words which kill the intelligence. So what does this mean? To gossip, to speak loosely, and all of this was something Raghunath Bhattacharya never partake of. He would only engage in the discussion of Krishna, and he would worship the Lord day and night, either his personal Ishtadev, or he would engage in worshipping the Govindaji deity. It mentions also that not only did he not engage in gossip, but he never blasphemed devotees. He would not even hear someone speak about the misdeeds of a Vaishnava. Now this is an important thing for us, because as we all live in different societies, different communities, whether they be small temple communities or whether they be large communities like we have here in Alachua, the tendency is there to speak ill of others. This is our shortcoming as we have this material body, and our shortcoming as we have no taste for the holy name of the Lord. And so we get great pleasure in finding the faults of others because it makes us feel better about ourselves. Our own shortcomings seem less if we can magnify the shortcomings of others. So this is a tendency which the living entity is prone towards, and which the living entity serious about devotional development and increasing their Krishna bhakti has to give up. And we have this example of how it can be done in the lives of the Goswamis, particularly Raghunath Bhatta Goswami. Not only would he not speak gossip, he would never criticize the devotee, neither would he hear about the shortcomings of the devotee. Now in our own lifetime, we had the opportunity to associate a little bit with one such Vaishnava as this, Jayananda Prabhu. I personally had seen, if you were sitting with Jayananda Prabhu and someone started to speak ill of a devotee, or mention some misbehavior of a devotee, Jayananda would simply get up and leave. He wouldn't listen. And he never spoke bad about devotees himself. Even some devotee had something worth speaking badly about, some nefarious activity, Jayananda would not engage in that activity. He would always find some way to turn the conversation around. So these examples that we get in the lives of the great personalities like Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, and in our modern day great personalities like Jayananda, are able to be attained. We just have to strive for them and work towards that goal. So his vision instead was that he only knew that someone was engaged in the service of the Lord. So this is another point in attaining that. Instead of seeing how someone's got some critical point, we see their service, we see their good side. Haridas Thakur explains in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that the nature of a devotee is to be like a honeybee. A honeybee is always attracted to the honey, to the sweetness. He said, but we should not be like a fly. A fly, the fly always goes to the sore. If you have a sore on your arm, some burn or some cut that's healing, flies always go there. You have to keep them away. Because the fly always goes towards the unpleasant place. So Haridas Thakur instructs that we should be like a honeybee, not like a fly. So in this way, Raghunath Bhatta supplemented, in the process of renunciation, we have to give up something, but we have to replace it. Prabhupada gives that classic example that if you have an inky atmosphere and you put an empty cup, ink will fill the cup. But if that cup already has milk in it, that ink can't go in there. So to replace the criticism of Vaishnavas and to replace the tendency towards gossiping, we should see only the good qualities of devotees. And in this way, we won't be prone towards that. So this was the nature of Raghunatha. So sometimes Raghunatha would become particularly steeped in the remembrance of the Lord. And when he would do so in this way, thinking of Lord Chaitanya, he would take out this tulsi garland, which he carefully preserved and worshipped, and he would put that around his neck. And that would absorb him so much more in remembering the Lord. Now this is actually described in the Nectar of Devotion. It mentions in the Nectar of Devotion that Uddhava gives a quote that because he takes the prasadam of the Lord, because he wears the ornament of the Lord, and because he keeps himself absorbed with these things that have been used by the Lord, this paraphernalia, therefore he's free from the influence of Maya. So this is an important point, to wear the prasadam of the Lord when it's applicable, or to keep the remnants of the Lord, different ways that we can use these things to enhance our remembrance of Krishna consciousness. So in this way, the ecstasy of Raghunath Bhatta increased more and more by remembering Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in this way. There's a very nice description given by Srinivasacharya in the Bhakti Ratnakar. The Bhakti Ratnakar, of course, is written by Narahari Sakar Thakur, and he quotes Srinivasacharya, and this quote is there. As I look upon the Samadhi tomb of Raghunath Bhatta, my heart breaks, and my eyes are awash with tears. But who is not overjoyed as soon as they hear Raghunath Bhatta Goswami's glories? He was such an expert teacher of all the scriptures that even Brihaspati would become cheerful upon hearing his descriptions and explanations of the Vaishnava doctrines. There is nothing to which his discourses on the Bhagavad can be compared. Even Vyas himself wishes to sit and hear the Bhagavad explained by Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, knowing that such explanation will bring the greatest of happiness. The demigods in heaven are astonished when they hear the devotional practices of Raghunath Bhatta Goswami. So it mentions that when the devotees heard Srinivasa's explanation like this, that they all fell to the ground in front of the Govindaji deity and were very happy to know of this. It also mentions that when Raghunath Bhatta Goswami departed from this world, he was about 79 years old. No, I take that back, 73. Uh, 76 years old, yeah. And that when he departed from this world, that the Muslims at that time were in their reign of terror, if you will, on Vrindavan, and many holy places were being desecrated. So, usually when a great saintly person departs, their body is placed completely in samadhi. So, Jiva Goswami arranged for the body of Raghunath Bhatta Goswami to be cremated and for the ashes to be placed in samadhi. That way the body couldn't be desecrated by the Muslims in this way. So a final thing we'll note here is that in Kavi Karnapur, the son of Shivananda Sen, in Kavi Karnapur's Gaura Gunadesha Dipika, he mentions that Raghunath Bhatta had the service of making a cottage home for Radha and Krishna during their Krishna Lila, and he was known by the name Raga Manjari. So these are some of the very wonderful pastimes of Raghunath Bhatta Goswami. He's one of those personalities that gives a very practical example of activities in life that we can easily follow and absorb ourselves in, and in this way advance our own Krishna consciousness. So we thank you very much for tuning in and listening today, and with that we'll finish another chapter in the lives of the Vaishnavacharyas. Hare Krishna.